We're going to learn about the silent letters in these four combinations. If you have KN at the start of a root word, meaning a word without any prefixes or suffixes, the K will be silent. So this sound is n, not. EE says E, knee, knit. OW says O in this word, no, known. We can add suffixes such as ing, and it doesn't change anything. So this is knowing. EW says oo, new. We can add a prefix, and the K will still be silent, unknown. In this word, we have the prefix un and two suffixes, ing and li, unknowingly. Here are some more words. This E is a silent E. It will make the I say I. Knife, knives. Notice that when we go from one knife to multiple, the F becomes a V. We can add the suffix ing, knocking, knelt. IGH says I, night, knock. Let's take a look at this word here. When you have a longer word that ends in LE with a consonant before it, we divide it 3 letters from the end into syllables. This letter U is in the middle of a syllable, so we will try the short sound. So we get knuckle. EE says E, kneel, knack, knock. One of the few words where K and N don't have the sound of N is the word darkness. Notice here we have the root dark, and the N is only here because of the suffix ness. So the silent K rule applies when the K is at the beginning of a root word, not when you have added a suffix such as ness to the end of a word ending in the letter K. If you have MB at the end of a root, the B will be silent. So this is lamb. A lamb is a baby sheep. Bomb, limb, numb, dumb. Here we have the root word dumb, and we can add the suffix dumber. So again, the B is silent when the M and B is at the end of a root. We can still add a suffix and have the B be silent. These 2-letter O's are both going to have the oo sound, so tomb and womb. On this slide, all the underlined vowels will use their long sound. So we have comb, combing, climb, climbing, climber. If you have MN at the end of a root, the N will be silent. So this sound is AU says ah, autumn, column, solemn. If you have WR, this is WN, but this should be WR. At the start of a root, the W will be silent. So this sound is wrist, wrist, wreck. We can add suffixes, wrecking, wrap, wrapper, wrapping, wrench, wren. A wren is a type of bird. And wrinkle. Right here, this I will be long because the root word is right, and then we've added the suffix When we add the suffix, we don't keep both E's, we only keep one. So we have writer, written, writers. We can add prefixes, and as long as the root starts with WR, the W will be silent. So unwritten. Right here, we have a compound word. It's made of the word song plus the word writer. Songwriter. Wrong. We can add suffixes. Wrongly. If you start a word with G and N, the G will be silent. So this sound is gnat, gnash, gnashing, gnome. AR says R, gnarl. Right here, this GN will just have the sound of The A is at the beginning of a word, and A at the beginning of a word often schwas and takes on a muffled sound. This I will be long, so this word is align. The rest of this lesson is optional. If you have MB at the end of a root word, the B is silent, like in the word crumb. But sometimes the B will take on a sound when you add other letters to the end in a suffix. Like here we have crumble. Here we have limb with a silent B, but we add the suffix and it becomes limber. Here we have condemn with a silent N, but when we add the letter A and the suffix shun, it becomes condemnation, where the N sound is clearly heard. If you have GN followed by a Latin root, the N can also have its sound. Like here we have the word sign with a long I and a silent N, and we add the suffix al and it becomes signal. Most of the time, AL at the end of a word takes on the muffled ul sound. This Y is between two consonants and will have a short I sound. So this is him with a silent N. Here we're going to add the muffled suffix ul to get hymnal, where you can clearly hear the N sound. Here we have column with a silent N, and when we add the suffix ist, it becomes columnist. Here we have a word that looks like a line from a previous screen, but we've just added an M, so it's malign. But when we add some suffixes, it becomes malignancy, where the N sound is clear. If you need more practice, you can download Word Mastery and work on those pages. We're going to learn how this suffix sounds like TURE and when Y has a short I versus a long I sound. Even though this is spelled T-U-R-E, it sounds like TURE because the sound TURE is hard to say. So this is TURE, TURE. This U will be long. Future, nature, vulture, texture, capture, fixture, culture. G followed by an E, I, or a Y may have its soft sound of J. It does in this word. Gesture, lecture, mixture. EA usually says E. Feature. OR says or. Torture. Pasture. Posture. UR says furniture. Venture. This A is going to schwa, which means it will have a muffled sound. Signature. The A in this word and the other versions of it with suffixes will also schwa. Mature. We can add suffixes to the ends of words with ture. Matured. Notice that when we add the suffix ed, we drop the E from the word mature because we don't want a double E. Maturing. Immature, premature, picture, pictured, picturing. UR says nurture, nurtured, nurturing. Notice how being able to spot prefixes and suffixes at the end or the beginning of long words makes them easier to read. If Y is in the middle of a syllable, particularly with one-syllable words, it will have a short I sound. A G followed by an E, I, or a Y may, but does not have to have its soft sound of J. In this case, it will. Gym. C followed by an E, I, or Y will always have its soft sound of S, so we have cyst. MN at the end of a word will have a silent N, so this word is hymn. TH will use its first sound of th, myth, lynx. C is followed by a Y, so it will have its soft sound of s, cynic. Now, very few English words end in the letter C. Most of the time, if the last sound is a k, it will be a K. About the only exceptions are English words that end in the Latin suffix ic, or the word sink here, but this is spelled with a C because it's actually a shortened version of a longer word. Lin, PH says f, lymph, nymph, mystic, crypt. A Y will have a long I sound after a consonant at the end of a short word, like in dry, sky, spy, and cry, and at the end of a syllable. I've divided these words into syllables so you can see that. Cyber, ER says hyper, lying, hydra. Notice that A at the end of a word usually schwas to a muffled sound. That's why it's hydra. At the end of a long word, a Y will usually have a long E sound, like in the word baby. If you need more practice, you can do the third column of page 56 in Word Mastery. We're going to learn about AL plus a consonant, ALL not at the end of a root word, ANGE and ASTE. ANGE says ANGE. G, when followed by an EI or a Y, usually, but not always, uses its soft sound of J. It does in this case. So this is ANGE. ANGE. Angel. We can add other sounds in front of it without changing it. So this is change. CH says ch most of the time. We can add prefixes. Exchange. Range. We can add suffixes, and it doesn't change the sound. Ranger. Arrange. Notice that an A at the beginning of a word often schwas, which means it has a muffled sound. Strange. Danger. We can add other suffixes. Dangerous. We can add a prefix and a suffix. Endangering. ASTE at the end of a root word will have a long A sound. So this is ASTE. ASTE. Paste. We can add a suffix to the end of the root word and it retains the long A sound. So we have pasted. Haste. Hasty. Remember that a Y at the end of a long word usually has a long E sound. Taste. Tasty. Waste. Wasted. Based. Basting. If you have ASTE not at the end of a root, it will usually have the short A sound. Notice in this word we have ASTE, but the in this case is part of the root word and is not a suffix added to a root word. So this word will have a short A sound and will be plaster, master, faster. Notice the root word of fast and we just added the suffix lasted, pastel. OI says oi, asteroid. In this word, we started with the root word of waste and added the suffix ed, so it stays wasted. Tasted. In this word, we have ASTE, but the A is grouped with another vowel. E and A together usually say E, so this word is Eastern. If you have AL at the end of a root word with more than one syllable, the AL will usually schwa because it's part of a Latin suffix. So the schwa sound is usually a muffled but sometimes an I sound. So this word is not going to be pedal because that's hard to say. So we say it pedal. OR says or, choral. These underlined letters will have their long sound. So fatal, metal, final. We can add suffixes and the AL retains the muffled schwa sound. Finalist, legal, metal. OY says oi, loyal, loyalist. Again, this does not apply to words where the A comes after another vowel. In this case, EA together say E, so we have the word steel. If you have AL plus another consonant at the end of a root word, the A will have its broad A sound of So this word is salt, exalt, scald, bald. We can add suffixes and the A will retain the broad A sound. Balder, balding, exalt, exalted, exalting. If you have AL plus a consonant not at the end of a root, it can be either the short A sound of or the broad A sound of The short A sound is more common. Here are some words where it will have the broad A sound of ah. The underlined vowels will use their long sound. Also, always. Notice AY says A, and the S has its second sound of Z. This O will schwa and say almond. Like I said, the short A sound is more common when there's an A plus a consonant not at the end of a root. So if you're trying to decide which sound to try, use the short A sound first. Then try the broad A sound if it doesn't make a word you recognize with the short A. Album, ally, astronaut. AU says ah. Albino, album, falcon. Notice this O may schwa and take on an sound, just like in the word almond. If you're looking at a word that has ALL in it, and you're trying to decide, do I want the short A sound of ah or the broad A sound of ah, remember these rules. If ALL comes at the end of a root, try the broad sound. If ALL comes before another syllable that isn't a suffix, try the short sound. For example, here we have ALL at the end of the root of the word call, so we use the broad sound of ah. Here we have calling. We can add suffixes to the end of the root and it doesn't change the sound. Calling, caller. Here we have ALL followed by another syllable that is not a suffix. So we are going to try the short sound. In this case, we have a capital letter because this is the name Sally. Tally, ballot, palette, gallon, and gallop. If you have ALL before another syllable that isn't a suffix, it's going to use its short sound. Like in this word, this A will schwa to be a muffled sound, ballad. OW is going to use the long O sound of this word, gallow. This A will also schwa, gallant. This C is followed by a Y, which means it will use its soft sound of S. Also, this A will schwa to be a muffled sound, so fallacy. So again, in all these words, we had ALL not at the end of the root, and the syllable that came after it was not a suffix. So instead of using the broad A sound of all, we used the short A sound of al. If you have a word that starts with ALL, it often, but doesn't always, schwa. Again, a schwa is a muffled sound that usually sounds like especially at the beginning of a word, but sometimes has a short I sound in other places in a word. So in these words, we're going to try the muffled schwa sound of first. A lot. OW will say ow here. Allow. Allure. Allege. This G followed by an E uses its soft sound of J. We can add suffixes. Alleging. Alliance. This C uses its soft sound because C followed by an E, I, or a Y will always have the sound of S. Here are some words where we use a short A sound for a word beginning with ALL rather than a schwa. Allergy, allocate. If you have a word ending in ALLY and it's made up of the suffix AL plus the suffix LY, it's going to sound like ali because the suffix AL at the end of a word schwas, so that's the ul, and then the li part. Right here, we can see that this won't apply because our root word is real. So this word, even though it ends in ALLY, is actually the word real plus the suffix li. So here we have really. In this word, we have the word equal and the AL schwas, equally, legally, clinically, finally, totally, locally, basically, brutally. This C will have its soft sound of S. Centrally. OR says or. Formally. Globally. So if the word ends with ALLY and there isn't another vowel in front of it, try pronouncing it as ul-li, ali. because alley is hard to say. We're going to learn about the 3 sounds of GH, review IGH, and learn about EIGH. In most words, GH is silent. So if you only remember one rule, remember that GH is silent almost all the time. Here are some examples. IGH has a long I sound, so this part is I. So the word is sigh, tight. There are a few words where the GH has a silent H, meaning GH together will have the sound of G. Here we have a long O, so this word is ghost. This word is ghetto. And there are also a few words where GH sounds like the letter F. In both of these words, the OU will have a short U sound, so this is rough and tough. Like I said, most of the time GH is silent. One of the common letter combinations with a GH is IGH, which has the long I sound, so light, high. We can add suffixes and prefixes and it doesn't change anything. We will still have a long I sound. Tighter, pre-tighten, sight, right, night. KN has a silent K, so this word is also night. This night means the opposite of day. This knight is somebody who rode around on a horse to fight long ago. Here are some more words with a silent GH. In all of these words, EI is going to have a long A sound. So this sound is A. A. This is also A, with the GH being silent. 8, like the number. TH in this word will say th, eighth. 80. Remember that a Y at the end of a long word usually has a long E sound. Weigh, weight. We can add suffixes and it doesn't change the long A sound. Weighing, neighbor. Now OR usually says or, but at the end of a word it may take on a sound because it's easier to say. So while this looks like neighbor, most of the time people say neighbor as if this were ER. Freight. Now, one important exception is if EI comes after the letter C, it's going to have a long E sound. That will be covered in a different video. For now, if you just remember EIGH has the long A sound, that will be good enough. There are other vowel sounds that can be used with a silent GH. In this word, we have a long O sound, so this word is dough. We can also have a short O sound, like in ought and bought. We can have a broad A sound of ah, taught, caught, daughter. There are a few words where GH has the sound of F. In these words, the OU will have a short U sound. So we have rough, tough, enough. In this word, we have a short O sound, cough. In these words, AU, rather than having its normal sound of ah, will have a short A sound. So we have laugh, laughing, and laughable. Notice we can add suffixes and it does not change the sound of the vowel. There are also a few words where GH has a hard G sound of G. In this word, the I is going to take on a long E sound. So this word is spaghetti. Now, I would like to point out that English words do not end in the letter I, but this was an Italian word that was imported, so we kept the spelling the same. This word starts with an A, and A often schwas or takes on a muffled sound at the beginning of a word. So this word is aghast. OR says or, so this word is sorghum. Sorghum is a kind of grain. In both of these words, the O and U will have the long OO sound, which is the oo of the word moon. So this word will be ghoul and ghoulish. We're going to learn about silent H, L, P, and T. In some words, H is silent at the beginning. EI says A, so here we have the word air. Honor. Notice that OR, while it says or, at the end of a word usually sounds more like Honest. We can add prefixes and the H still remains silent. Dishonest. We can add suffixes. Honestly. This OU is going to say ow, hour, hourly, herb. Note that in the US, the H is silent in this word, but in some countries, the H is pronounced. If a word ends with a vowel and an H, the H will be silent, like in O, ah, and eh. EE says E, so this word is cheetah. Savannah, blah, shah, this I will be long, Messiah, and duh. There are some other words where H is silent in the middle, such as vehement, vehicle, and prohibition. Note that the root prohibit has the H pronounced, but once you add the shun, the H sound disappears. There are some names where the H is silent, John and Durham. If a word starts with RH, the H will be silent, like in rhino and rhythm. Note that Y in the middle of a syllable has a short I sound, and this TH uses the second sound of th, so the word is rhythm. And rhyme. This E makes the Y take on a long I sound. In addition, we have these combinations where H is with a consonant. W and H together in most of the US sounds like W, but in some parts it sounds like Hw, where the H sound is pronounced before a W rather than the H being silent. So this word is white. There are a few words with WH where the W is silent instead of the H, like the word who. SH says sh, like in ship. CH has 3 sounds. The most common is ch, like in chin. The second most common is k, like in school. OO says oo in this word. And the third sound is sh, like in chef. GH is silent most of the time, like in sight. There are some words where the H is silent, like in the word ghost. And there are a few words where G and H take on the sound of an F, like in laugh. When a word starts with PS, the P is silent, like in psychology. Notice the CH uses its second sound of K. And in Psalms. When a word starts with PT, the P will also be silent, like in pterodactyl, which was a type of flying dinosaur. Words starting with PN also have a silent P, like in pneumatic, EU says oo, and pneumonia. There are words with silent T's as well. They mostly fall into one of these 2 patterns, where the end of the word is sul, like in castle, wrestle. Note that when a word starts with WR, the W is silent. So this word is wrestle, apostle, and whistle. Words ending in sen also have a silent T, like in listen. OI says oi, so this is moisten. Note that the root is moist, but when we add the suffix, the T sound disappears. Hasten. The same thing happens here. The root is haste, and we add the N, and the T sound disappears. And fasten. 2 other common words where the T is silent are often, although in some parts of the US the T is pronounced, and Christmas. Notice that the CH takes its second sound of K in this word. Most words with a silent L will follow one of these 3 patterns. In the first column, I have words ending in ALK. In all of these words, the A will take on its broad sound of ah. So we have walk, talk, chalk, and stalk. In all these words, the A has its broad sound of ah, and the L is silent. In this column, I have words ending in ALM. The A will have its broad sound of ah, and the L will be silent. Here we have calm. We can add a suffix to the root, and it doesn't change the sound of the root. Calmly, balm, and psalms. Notice the P is silent. 2 words follow this pattern with a long O and a silent L. Folk and yoke. And 2 more common words are half and calf. We're going to learn the 3 sounds of CH and the sound of TCH. The most common sound of CH is ch. This is the first one kids learn. Chin, inch. EW says oo or you. Chew, rich, such, much. EA in this word says E, cheap. OU says ow most of the time. Ouch. Each. TCH also says ch, and it is used at the end of a root word after a short vowel sound. Batch, catch, patch, witch, match, match, pitch, Dutch. In this word, A will have its broad sound of ah, watch. CH sounds like k in some words, especially if the root word was Greek. In this word, OO says oo, so we have school, ache, Note that although silent E usually only works if there's one letter between the vowel and it, CH has one sound, so this E still makes the A have its long sound. The underlined letter is going to have its long sound. Technology. G followed by an E, I, or a Y usually, but not always says J. It does in this word, and Y at the end of long words usually has a long E sound. So technology. Tech, which is short for technology. Anchor. Although OR usually says OR, at the end of a word it tends to become muffled and sound more like Conch. A conch is a type of shell. OR says OR. Chorus. A chorus is a group of people singing. S will sound like Z in this word. Chasm. Chronic. AR says R. Monarch. That's a type of butterfly. Archive. Notice that this E does not change the I to its long sound. English words don't end in the letter V. So if the last sound of a word is V, we stick an E there. Stomach. Note that in this word, the O sounds like a short U. Character. AR says R at the end of a word or when followed by another consonant. When followed by a vowel, it usually says air. Chemist. Scheme. Mechanic. Orchestra. OR says or. A's at the end of a word, usually schwa to sound like orchestra. In these words, CH will sound like sh. This usually happens in words that we got from French. Chef. A chef is a fancy cook. Chicago. That's a city in the United States. Chiffon. That's a type of fabric. Michigan. Note that this A schwas. Michigan is a state in the United States. In this word, the I is going to sound like a long E. Machine. Brochure. Parachute. Notice the AR is followed by another vowel, so it says air instead of R, and this A schwas, it takes on the muffled sound. Pistachio. I, when followed by an O, usually has a long E sound, so we have EO. Pistachio. That is a type of nut. The rest of this lesson is optional, especially for younger students. Here we have some more words where CH sounds like the letter K. Anarchy. Anarchy. Alchemy. Alchemy. Anchorage. Notice that the OR takes on a muffled sound, and AGE at the end of a word, rather than having a clear long A sound and sounding like age, tends to take on an edge sound. Anchorage. That's a city in Alaska. PS says S. Psychology. Note that the Y at the end of a syllable has a long I sound, and this G takes on the J sound because of the Y. Psychology. This I will have its long sound. Christ. Notice that when we go from Christ to talking about the holiday, Christmas, the T sound disappears and the I becomes short. Chrome. That's a type of metal. Orchid. That's a type of flower. These A's and this O are going to have their long sounds. Archaic. Archaic means from primitive times or very long ago. Note that this O sounds like a short U in from, and once again, this E does not change this I to a long I. It's just there to keep the word from ending in V. Chaos. Chaos means something that is completely confused. Archaeology. AE says E in this word. And here we have a whole suffix, ology. Archaeology. Archaeology is the study of what humans left behind long ago. Note that WH says W. This A sounds like a short U, so we have what. And NG says ng. And this A takes on a muffled schwa sound of We're going to review the sounds of O and learn about when O has a short U sound. The most basic sound is the short O sound, like in hot and not. Then there's the long O, which can be spelled with the letter O, like in go and so, with an OE, like toe and goes. Notice the S in this word uses its second sound of Z, and it can also be spelled OA, like in boat and coat. OO has two sounds. the oo of moon, and the of book. I like to remember this by imagining the moon sitting there reading a book. OI and OY both spell oi, like coin and boy. OW has two sounds. I remember this by slow down. O, ow. OU has four sounds. The most important one to remember, that is used most of the time, is the ow sound of out. It can also have a long O sound like in for, an oo sound like in soup, and a short U sound like in young. OR says or most of the time, like in words like fork. Sometimes, especially at the end of a word, our mouth gets a little lazy and it sounds more like like in doctor. If you have a root word ending in these patterns, it will have a long O sound, like in gold, bolt, and yoke. Notice the L in this word is silent. We have also learned about O having the long OO sound, like in to and do. If you're reading a word and you try both the long and short O sounds and you still don't recognize it, try a short U sound, like in come, some, and done. Note in these words the E doesn't do anything. Here we have from and does. While OE usually has a long O sound, in this word the E doesn't do anything. Also notice the S uses its second sound of Z. Here we have covet. To covet something is to be jealous of another person who has it. Here we have love. Notice the E doesn't do anything except keep the word from ending in V, because English words don't end in V. SH says sh, so we have shove, and we have cover because ER says TH in this word is going to use its sound of V, and again we have so we have other, mother, and brother. A at the beginning of a word often schwas, which means it takes on a muffled sound. NG says so here we have among, above, and color. Once again, this OR tends to sound like The CH in this word will use its second sound of k. So we have stomach, monk, and monkey. EY at the end of words usually has a long E sound. Here we have come. Once again, the E doesn't do anything. We can add a few more letters and make it become. We can add a suffix, and it is now becoming. Some, something. TH in this word says th, and NG says wonder. Once again, the A's in these words will schwa. Among, above, month. Here we have a root word of govern. ER says We can add a suffix, and it becomes governor. Notice that the or sound at the end of a word tends to become muffled and sound like We can add other suffixes, governing and government. Notice that in this word, the N sound usually completely disappears, and rather than saying government, it becomes government with the N disappearing. Y at the end of a long word usually has a long E sound, so here we have company. We can add a few more letters and it becomes accompany. Notice this A schwas. We can add a suffix and it's accompanying. To accompany means to go along with somebody. Here are a few more sight words that I haven't covered in other lessons. In these three, we have a short U sound. WH has the sound of W in most of the United States, so this word is what. This S will use its second sound, so we have was. This AU is going to have a short U sound, even though it usually says so we have because. What was because? In all three of these words, these vowels take on a short E, and the Y at the end has a long E, so any, many, been. These two have long A sounds, and this Y will have a long E, so we have where and very. Let's go through these again. What, was, because, any, many, been, where, and very. Here are a few more. By, in this word, the O is going to completely disappear. People. This E will have a short I sound. Pretty. EA will have its usual long E sound, and the S will say Z, so this is please, and R. AR usually says R, but you would think this would be a silent E, making it air, but for some reason it is not. Now, here are the last three important ones. One of the most common writing mistakes that people make is to use the wrong word for there. So all three of these words are there. They're all pronounced the same, but they're spelled differently because they have different meanings. If you want the word that means location, you want this one. Notice it has the word here right in it. So if you could replace the word there with the word here and it still makes sense, then use this one. For example, put that down over there. This U uses its third sound of TH says th, OW says ow, this O has a long O, and this ER says So put that down over there. You could say put that down here and it would make sense. The way I remember it is this word there has the word here in it. So T here. You could think of it for spelling purposes as I need to write down T here. If you want to show that somebody owns something, you want this one. That is their cat. So if you could replace it with her when referring to one person, then this is the one you want. If you want the contraction, short for they are, then this is what you want. They are sitting becomes they're sitting. So again, when trying to figure out which word you want to use, if you could use the word here, use T here, there. If you could use her, use the EIR one. If you could replace it with they are, use the contraction. We're going to learn about the most important English suffixes. The most basic suffix is simply to add an S or ES to make something plural. S can have two sounds. It can be the sound of S, like in cats, or it can take on the Z sound, like in dogs or kisses. ED can sound like ed, like in handed, AI says A, painted, and sanded. It can also sound like the letter D, AY says A, like in played, tamed, and named. Finally, it could sound like the letter T, like in cooked, picked, and packed. ING says ing, like in singing, clapping, AY says A, playing. OUS is pronounced us, and it means full of. OY says oi, so this word is joyous. Joyous means full of joy. ER says so this word is nervous. The letters that are underlined will have their long sounds. Fabulous. IOUS is pronounced eous, and it also means full of, like in serious, obvious, and curious. LY is pronounced ly. This OW will say O, so this is slowly. OLD at the end of a root word has a long O sound, so this is boldly. AR says R, so this is partly. The suffix IVE is pronounced IV with a short I sound. The E is only there to keep the V from being the last letter. This suffix means tends to, so the word active would mean somebody who tends to act. Abusive would be somebody who tends to abuse. Creative would be somebody who tends to create. These two endings also mean tends to. The A in this word will generally schwa and sound more like so this word is negative. This AL will have a broad A sound, talkative, and relative. This Z will have a Z sound, positive, repetitive, additive. This suffix is pronounced shun. So here we have option, action, and potion. This suffix is pronounced ation, like in vacation, taxation, mutation. This one is ishin, like addition, tuition, and addition. This suffix has two different pronunciations. The first one is shun, like in passion and mission, and sometimes it's pronounced jeune, like in fusion. ER and EST are two suffixes that are used for comparing. So here we have our root word fast. If we want to compare two things, we can say that one is faster than the other. If we want to compare three or more things, we can say that one of them is the fastest. OW says O, so here we have slow, slower, slowest. ALL at the end of a root says all, so here's tall, taller, tallest. Remember, if you're comparing two things, you use If you're comparing three or more, you use est. EE says E, so here we have green, greener, greenest. Here we have the word happy. Notice that when we add the suffix the Y becomes an I. So here we have happier, and happiest. IGH has a long I sound, and the GH is silent. So this is bright, brighter, brightest. OU says ow most of the time. Loud, louder, loudest. EA says E most of the time. Clean, cleaner, cleanest. IR says dirty. Notice that when we add a suffix that starts with a vowel, the Y becomes an I. So we change the Y to an I before we add the or the est. So dirtier, dirtiest. EA most of the time says E, like in clean, but sometimes it has a short E sound, and it does in this word. So this word is heavy. Once again, the Y becomes an I before adding a suffix starting with a vowel. Heavy, heavier, heaviest. OU says ow most of the time. Round, rounder, roundest. SH says sh, and this I will have a long I sound. Shiny, shinier, shiniest. Notice once again that the Y became an I before adding a suffix that began with a vowel. UR says sturdy. Sturdy means strong or well made. Sturdier, sturdiest. Fuzzy, fuzzier, fuzziest. AR says harsh. Harsh means unpleasant, rough, or mean. Harsher, harshest. The suffixes ER and OR refer to a person or thing that does something or has something. For example, this word is teach because EA says E most of the time. So a teacher is somebody who teaches. Here we have bike, and a biker is somebody who has a bike. Bake, baker. Y at the end of a short word usually has a long I sound. So here we have dry, dryer. AY says A, lay, layer. This O will have the sound of oo, move, mover. Act, actor. While OR has the sound of or most of the time, at the end of a word, it generally sounds just like ER as So we don't say actor, we say actor. AI says A, sail, sailor. The suffix less means without. So here we have end. So endless means something that doesn't have an end. Job, jobless. Somebody who is jobless doesn't have a job. AW says So law, lawless. Lawless would mean without a law. This word could be pronounced two different ways. Using the Z sound, it is the verb use. Here we want the noun, use. So here is use, useless. Something that is useless has no use. Flaw, flawless. Spot, spotless. UE has a long U sound. So here we have clue, clueless. AR says harm, harmless. Full, with one L, is the suffix that means full of. OY says oi. So here is joy, joyful. Joyful means full of joy. AW says law, lawful. Sin, sinful. Care, careful. UR says hurt, hurtful. Help, helpful. Somebody who is helpful helps a lot. This O is going to schwa and take on a short U sound. And once again, the OR at the end of a word will generally sound like ER. So this word is color, colorful. Something that is colorful is full of color. This EA will have a long E sound, and the C is going to take its soft sound of S. So here we have peace, peaceful. The suffixes able and ibble both mean able. This O has the third sound of O, which is oo. So do, doable. Notice that while this word by itself is able with a long A sound, as soon as we turn it into a suffix, it sounds more like ubble, because generally in English, we don't accent or emphasize the sounds in suffixes. When sounds are not emphasized, often take on the muffled schwa sound of So we don't say do-able, we say doable. Here is move, movable. This O is going to schwa and sound like and this E is just there to keep the V from being the last letter of the word. So here we have love, lovable. AY says A, pay, payable. Note, notable. This S will take on its second sound of Z, visible. AU says audible. Flex, flexible. So something that is flexible can be flexed or bent. sense, sensible. Notice that this word ends in an E, but when we add the suffix ible, we drop the E. The suffix al is pronounced ul at the end of a word. Here we have the word bride, bridal. The suffix al means active, so bridal would have something to do with the act of being a bride. Au says ah, this S will have its second sound of z. Cause, causal. So something that is causal will be part of the act of causing something. Or says or, floral, formal. Adjectives ending in y or ty mean the quality of. So right here we have dusty. Remember that a y at the end of a longer word usually has a long e sound. So dusty has the quality of having dust. Ir says flirty, crusty. This suffix is itty, which also means quality of. Vanity. Vanity means the quality of being vain or obsessive or caring too much about your appearance. Sanity. Cavity. Meant means the condition of. So a payment is something that has the condition of paying somebody. Pavement, movement. The suffix ness means state of being. So a person that has good fitness has the state of being fit. Sadness means the state of being sad, and madness means the state of being mad. En means to become, so to lessen means to become less. OLD at the end of a root word, it has a long O sound. So golden means to become gold. This O has the sound of oo, proven. Ick and ickle mean relating to. So here we have rustic, scenic, medical. I'd like to point out that English words basically do not end in the letter C unless they end in this suffix. Now, the rest of this lesson is optional because it might be difficult for younger students. Both of these suffixes are pronounced shull. AR says R, so here we have martial, partial, initial, spatial, essential, and impartial. Notice right here we have the prefix im, which will be covered in the prefix video. These words are also pronounced with shull. Once again, the underlined letters have their long sound. Facial, racial, social. We're going to learn about the most important English prefixes. Un and non both mean not or opposite. So here we have the word able with a long A. We add un in front of it and we get the word unable, which means not able. Cut, uncut. Zip, unzip. IE at the end of a short word has a long I sound. So we have tie, untie. UE says oo or you. True, untrue, which means not true. Rest, unrest. Fat, non-fat. So non-fat means it doesn't have fat. Slip, non-slip. The prefix re means again. Here we have a word that uses the oo sound of O. Do, redo. Redo means to do again. Act, react. Cap, recap. Did, redid. EW says oo. New, renew. So renew would mean to make something new again. In this word, S will use its second sound of Z. Use, reuse. ALL at the end of a root says all. Call, recall. AW says ah. Draw, redraw. Im means not and into. Here we have the root moral. AL at the end of a word usually sounds more like ul. Moral means right behavior. If we add the prefix im, meaning not in front, we get the word immoral. So something that is immoral is not moral or not okay to do. OR says or, port. Port is a Latin root that means carry. Here we add im and we get the word import. In this case, the prefix im means into. So to import is to carry something in. This A is going to schwa, which means it will sound like TURE at the end of a word usually sounds like chur. So this word is mature. Mature means fully grown or something in its final state. So immature means something that is not fully grown. Here are more words with the im prefix, which again can mean not or into. Impede, immune, AR says R, impart, imprint. This Y is going to have a long I sound, imply. This S will have its second sound of Z, impose, impact, impress, impulse. In also means not or into. So here we have the root word side, and inside means to go into the side. Here we have the root active. This E is only here at the end of a word to keep the word from ending in V. We add the prefix in and we get inactive, which means not active. Here we have the root word decent with a long E and a C using its soft sound of S because of the E. So decent, we add in and we get indecent, which means not decent. Here are more words with the in prefix. This U is going to have its long U sound. Human, inhuman, infest. We can add suffixes, infesting, index. We can add the ed suffix to show its past tense. Indexed, infect, infecting, infection. Remember that tion is the suffix shun. Infinity, insane, insanely. If you don't recognize all of these blue suffixes, be sure to check out my top 19 English suffixes video. The prefix dis means lack, opposite, apart, or away. So here we have like. If you don't like somebody, you dislike them. Here we have the root able, and disable means not able. Here we have the root agree, this a schwaz. That's why it sounds like instead of a. And ee has a long e sound. Agree. If you don't agree, you disagree. Here are more words with the dis prefix. Disarm, dispel. AL at the end of a word usually sounds like ul. Distal, discuss. Remember, any word ending in a double S uses the s sound. Dispute. OR says or. Distort. AI says a. Disdain. This C is followed by an E, so it's going to use its soft sound of S, and the ER says discern, disgust. UR says disturb. This will use its second sound of Z, dispose. AY says A, display. The prefixes N and M both mean in, to put in, or to cause something to be in a certain state. CH says ch. So we have the root rich. Enrich means to cause something to be rich. Here we have the root able. Enable means to cause someone to be able. OY says oi, so here we have joy. To enjoy means to put joy into something. OW in this word says ow, and here we have power. To empower means to cause someone to have the power to do something. Here are more words with these prefixes. Enact, OW in this word says ow, and dow, and list. OLL at the end of a root has a long O sound. Enroll, entice, OR says or. The C is followed by an EI or a Y, so it says S. Enforce, embark, emblem, empire, OY says oi, employ. Y at the end of a longer word usually says E, empty, emperor. Notice that both of these syllables sound like because OR at the end of a word usually sounds more like instead of or. The prefix over means over, too much, or above something. UE has a long U sound, so this root is due, so overdue. If you have a bill that is overdue, it is past due. You haven't paid it on time. Overuse means to use something too much. Overtime. Oversee. The double E has a long E sound. Overlap. This O is going to schwa and sound like a short U. Overcome. Overly. Overrun. EA usually says E, but in this word we'll have a short E sound. Overhead. These O's are going to say in this word. Overtook, overture. TURE at the end of a word usually sounds like chur because TURE is hard to say. UR says overturn. The prefix mis means bad or wrong. So when you misuse something, you use it in the wrong way. EA usually says E, so this is mislead. This root is took with an sound, so mistook, mistake, misled, mismatch, mistrust. C is going to say S because of the E. Misplace, misconduct, misconduct. Sub means below, beneath, or under, just like the word submarine. Subway, AY says A. So a subway is a way of travel that is underground. This I is going to have its long I sound. Subtitle. The subtitles are the words on the screen below the characters. UE has a long U sound. Subdue. Suburb. UR says Subset. Subunit. Subunit. Sublime. Subclass. Submit, subject, subtract, subside. Pre and for both mean before. Here we have the root natal. AL says at the end of a word, and this has a long A. Natal has to do with birth, so a prenatal doctor appointment is a doctor appointment before the baby is born. AI says A, prevail, prevent, prefer, prefix, predict, pretend, prepare. IOUS is a suffix that says eus, previous, foreman, foresee, forecast. Inter means between, among, or during. So here we have the root state. So an interstate is a highway that runs between two or more states. Interact, interest, internal. The AL says internal. When people are speaking this word quickly in American English, this sound here usually completely disappears, and instead of sounding like interest, it becomes interest. This AL is going to say so we have interval, interfere, interrupt, intersect, intervene, AY says A, interplay. The prefix D means from, down, or do the opposite. So to defrost something means to thaw it out. It is frozen and you want it to not be frozen. Debone, when you are deboning meat, you're taking it off the bone. Debunk, debulk. This C is going to say S because of the E. Decent, decide. C followed by an E, I, or Y uses the soft sound of S. OY says oi, decoy, or deform. The prefix trans means across, beyond, or through, or transform, transaction. Notice the shun here. Transcript, transfer, translate, transmit. Super means over, big, or above normal. This U is going to have its long U sound. So we have the root of human. So somebody who is superhuman is more than human, above normal. A superstar would be a really big star. Somebody with superpowers, ow and superpowers, has powers that are beyond normal. This S is going to say Z. Supervise means to see over somebody, to be their boss, because the root vise means to see. A supermarket is a really big market, a huge grocery store. And supersonic means above normal hearing, because sonic has to do with hearing. This prefix, it can be pronounced either semi or semi. You will hear it both ways in American English. It means half, part, or twice. So the confusing part is it can mean half, or it can mean twice. So you really need to know from the context which one it's going to mean. So here we have the root final with a long I and the ul ending. The semifinal of a tournament is not the championship game, but the two games before that to determine which two teams will play each other. Here we have con, and this OR is at the end of a word, so it will usually sound more like So a semiconductor, semi-soft, semi-solid. Like I said, this can be pronounced semi, so this could be semi-final, semiconductor, semi-soft, or semi-solid. This prefix can also be pronounced with both a long I as anti and a long E as anti. Here we have the root body. Y is at the end, so it usually has a long E sound. So antibody or antibody. Antitrust or antitrust. Antibiotic or antibiotic. Anti-dumping, here we've added a suffix, or anti-dumping. The prefix mid means middle, so the midbrain, AI says A, would refer to the middle of your brain. Oo, mid-afternoon would be the middle of the afternoon. Midsummer would be the middle of the summer. A, midday, midterm, ow, midtown. Under means below, not enough, smaller than, or inferior to. Here we have the root age, G followed by an E, I, or a Y, usually, but does not always have to use its soft sound of J. So here we have the root age. Under age refers to a person who is below the age requirement. They are not old enough for the activity. This O is going to schwa and sound like a short U. So we have undercover, undercut, ow, underground, underside. This A is going to have its broad A sound of ah, underwater. So underwater would be below the water. The rest of this lesson is optional, especially for younger students. Here we have the prefix ig, which means not. It's not a very common prefix, but it is in some common words, so I'm including it. So to ignore means to not know, because the root right here means to know. So to ignore is to not know. Here we've added a suffix, and so this O keeps the long O sound that it had in the root. So we have ignoring, and somebody who is used to ignoring things can be described as an ignorant person. This A usually will sound more like a short U or a short I. So you don't really hear people say ignorant. You'll hear ignorant with a short I or ignorant with a short U. IL and IR are also prefixes that mean not. So here we have the root legal with a long E and the ul sound. So something that is illegal is not legal. Here we have the root regular. This AR sounds more like because it is not accented. So here we have the word regular. Something that is irregular is not regular. Here we have shun and ul. Rational. Something that is irrational is not rational. This G is going to have the soft sound because of the I. So we have logic, logical, illogical. Something that is illogical is not logical. Today, you're going to learn what's probably the #1 secret of excellent readers. Before we begin, let's make sure that you're familiar with the top 24 English prefixes. If you're not familiar with most of these, please see my top 24 English prefixes video. Let's go through them quickly. Un, re, in, im, dis, nm, non, over, miss, sub, pre, inter, for, de, trans, super, semi or semi, anti or anti, mid, under, ig, ill, and Here are the most important suffixes to be able to recognize. They're covered in my top 19 English suffixes video. S and es, ed, t, ing, li, or, est, shun, ation, ishin, full, ibble, able, al, eal, itty, ness, meant, ick, ickle, us, en, iv, and less. So what is the #1 secret of excellent readers? It's first looking for the root and then finding the prefixes before the root and the suffixes after. So here we have the root able with a long A sound. Now we've added a prefix. So we have unable, disable, disabled, disabling, enabling. Notice that when we add a suffix that starts with a vowel, this E gets dropped. Here we have the root no with a silent K and OW having the O sound. We can add the suffix and we have knowing, known, unknown, unknowingly. Here we have hospital. Notice that AL at the end of a word usually sounds more like ul rather than al. So we can add this suffix eyes and we have hospitalize. Now we can add this and we have hospitalization. Notice when we go from hospitalize with a long I, hospitalization with a short I. I'd like to point out that although the root is hospital with the ul sound here, as soon as we add itty, it becomes hospitality, where this syllable is accented. Here we have a root vantage, which means profit. This right here is actually a suffix, and although the word by itself would be age, the suffix is pronounced more like idge. So we've added a prefix. We have advantage, disadvantage, advantageous. Notice that when we add the us, this A takes on a long A sound. Let me point that out again. We have advantage versus advantageous. Disadvantaged. Here's our root class. Classic, classical, classy, subclass, classification. Port is a root that means carry. OR says or. So we can start adding prefixes and suffixes. Deport, importing, exported, important, reporter. We can add more prefixes and suffixes to the root port. Transport, unimportant, support, opportune, opportunity. Notice that when we add this suffix, the E gets dropped. Here's our root school with CH having its K sound and the double O having the U sound. Schooling, schoolable, preschooler, unschool. Here we have the root compute, which itself has the prefix com in it. Computer, computation, computational. Here we have another root, compete, which has a prefix in it, com, compete, competition. Notice that when we start adding suffixes to the root compete, this long E becomes a short E sound. So we have compete, competition, competitive, competitor, competent, incompetent. Here we have shrink. SH says sh. To shrink means to make smaller. So we have shrinkage, unshrinking, unshrinkingly, shrinkable, unshrinkable. OW says ow in this word. Crowd, overcrowding, undercrowded. Here we have the root point with OI saying oi. We can add the suffix and it becomes a point. Notice that A at the beginning of a word often schwas or takes on a short U sound. Appointment, disappoint, pointy, pointless. Here we have the root act, action, active, activate, activation, activity. Actor, activism, actual. Notice the long U sound. Actually, actuality. Here's our root gram, diagram. Notice the A schwas. Program, programmer, programming, telegram. Here we have elect with a long E. Election, elector, electoral, electorate. Notice that the suffix ate takes on a muffled schwa sound of or I rather than a clear long A sound because suffixes are rarely accented in English words. Here we have a root comment, which has a prefix com in it. Commenting, commentary, note the long A. Commentate, commentator. Here we have a root subject, which has a prefix in it. Subjective, resubjection. What does that word mean? It doesn't matter. You can read it even if you don't know what it means. Subjectable, subjectiveness. Here we have the root face, interface, deface. Notice the C has its soft sound of S because it's followed by an E. Defacing, this E gets dropped when we add a suffix starting with a vowel. Defacement. Here we have bark, embark, debark, debarked, disembarking, embarkation. All right, I want you to try these on your own. See if you can spot all the prefixes and suffixes in these words. Don't worry about if you don't know what they mean. Just see if you can read them. Here we go. Compunctionless, descriptionless, perspectiveless, non-controllable, non-reimbursable, semi-respectable. Semi can also be pronounced semi, so it could be semi-respectable. I want you to try these on your own, and in the comments, list how many prefixes and suffixes you can find in these 6 words. These 3 and the next 3. So in the comments, Put the number and which prefixes and suffixes you found in the video. If you found this useful, please be sure to share it with friends who have kids who are learning to read. We're going to learn more sounds of E today. EU has a long U sound of U or U, depending on what letter it comes after. In these words, it uses the U sound, like in Euro, Europe. Notice this O is not long. Feud, feudal, deuce. The C says S because of the E. Deuce means two. Q, that's a word that means a line. And eulogy. A eulogy is a speech given at a funeral. In these words, the EU has the second long U sound of U, like in neutral. Note that the AL at the end of a word often sounds more like ul. Neutron, leukemia. This I has a long E sound before the A. Neurotic. This PH will say F, and this I will also have a long E sound. Euphoria. Euphoria means extreme happiness. Maneuver. This CH will use the French sh sound. Chauffeur. A chauffeur is a driver. There are also some prefixes that use the U sound of EU, like neuro, which means brain, and pseudo. Note that this P is silent. Pseudo means false. But be careful not to get tricked. You need to watch out for prefixes and compound words. Like right here we have an EU, but the E is part of the prefix re, so we have the word reuse and reunite. Right here we have an E and a U, but they're from two separate words. The words line and up that make line up, and here we have the word makeup. There are also some words from Latin that split between the E and the U, like museum, petroleum, nucleus, coliseum. Coliseum spelled this way refers to a stadium or amphitheater. Coliseum spelled this way with a capital C refers to the specific amphitheater in Rome. If you see an EI, try the long A sound first, like in the words there and theirs with the th sound. In these words, the G and H are going to be silent. 8, 80, way, wait, veil, heir. This word heir means somebody who inherits something. Freight, notice the silent GH, where freight refers to goods being shipped. Heinous, although OU usually says ow, OUS at the end of a word is pronounced us. Something that is heinous is shockingly evil. Vein, this vein refers to a blood vessel. Reign with a silent G, which refers to royal authority. And in this word, GH is going to be silent. Neighbor. Notice that OR at the end of a word can sound more like EI can have some other sounds as well. But like I said, try the long A sound first. In these words, it's muffled and more of a schwa sound. Foreign, forfeit, counterfeit. In these words, it's going to have a long I sound. Note that GH will be silent in these words, just like it is in most English words. So we have height, slight. Slight means deceitful craftiness. Feisty. A feisty person is fidgety or tends to argue or be aggressive. Seismic, which means caused by an earthquake. A heist is an armed robbery, and a Geiger counter is a tool used for finding radiation. Here are some words where EI has a long E sound, like in weird. Seize. Seize means to forcefully take something or someone. Leisure. Notice that this SURE is pronounced jure. Leisure refers to free time. This word could be pronounced with a long E sound as either or with a long I sound as either. The same with this word. It can be neither or neither. And here we have protein. If you have CEI, it's going to have a long E sound. And the C is going to have its soft sound of S. So if you see a CEI in a word, it's pronounced like the word C. So here we have ceiling, conceive, receive, deceive, receipt. This P is silent. And perceive. In all of these words ending in VE, the E is just there to keep the V from being the last letter because English words generally do not end in the letter V. Don't get tricked by compound words and suffixes. In these words here, I have marked the suffixes. So here we have a root B, and we've had ing, and we have being. So although we have the E and I together, It does not have a long A sound. Here we have seeing. Here we have two compound words, herein and wherein. Note that in most of the United States, this H is silent. Here we have eyeing, fleeing, and atheist, where these two letters have their long sounds. If we have EY at the end of a shorter word, try the long A sound, like in the word they, hay, prey. This word prey means an animal caught for food. Whey, note the silent H again. Whey is an ingredient left over from making cheese. Obey, UR says so we have survey and convey. In these two words, the EY will have a long I sound, geyser and I. A geyser is a hole in the ground that water shoots up from. In most words, EY is going to have a long E sound. For example, in all of these words, the EY is a suffix. Here we have the root word bone, and we added the suffix Y to get the word bony with a long E sound. Here we have the root dice. We add the Y, we get dicey. Here we have piney, nosy, where the S has its second sound of Z, and smile plus E becomes smiley. EY can have a long E sound at the end of a few shorter words, such as key, the name Joey, and this Joey that refers to a baby kangaroo. EY at the end of longer words usually has a long E sound. In these three words, the O is going to schwa and sound like a short U. So we have money, honey, and monkey. Here we have alley, which is a narrow street, especially between buildings. Although ALL at the end of a word usually says all, before a vowel, it has the short A sound of al instead of the broad A sound of all. That will be true in this word too. So here we have galley. This double O will have the oo sound, so we get gooey. Something that's gooey is wet and sticky. Barley, which is a type of grain, and valley. UR says so we have turkey, hockey, kidney, volleyball. Here the ALL is at the end of a word, so it's all instead of al, like in these two words. EW says oo or you, so here we have New Jersey. S has the Z sound. Chimney, this OUR is going to say and we have the word journey. EY is sometimes used at the end of names, where it will have a long E sound, like in the name Riley, Whitney, note the silent H in most of the US, Casey, AI says A, Bailey, Harvey, and Barney. And here are some last names that use EY at the end, Langley, Ridley, and Sweeney. We're going to learn about the sounds of IE and some words ending in the letter I. IE at the end of very short words has a long I sound. You could see level 5, lesson 6 for more info. Right here we have pie, lie, die, tie, and vi. At the end of longer words, it has a long E sound. Like in cutie, with the U having a long U sound, this O is going to have the sound of oo, movie. Here is birdie, hoodie, selfie, again, cookie, OA says O, so goalie. Again, you could see level 5, lesson 6 for more practice with this. Also, if you have IES or IED for a suffix, you need to be careful. First, look at the root. Here we have the root cry. So here in this word, Y has a long I. So when we add the suffixes and change the Y to an IE, the IE is going to have the same sound that the Y originally had. So we have cry with a long I sound. So these two IEs will also have a long I sound. So cry, cries, cried. Fry, fries, fried. Deny, note the long E. Denies, denied. Try, tries, tried. So if you see a word with an IES or IED at the end, stop and think, does the root word have a Y with a long I sound? If so, the IE will keep the long I sound. Again, you could see this level in lesson for more practice. There are a few words where you need to watch out where you don't get tricked. You need to look for prefixes and compound words. So right here we have the word untie with the prefix un. So the root tie is short, so it has the long I sound. Now we have a compound word, necktie. And finally we have the word magpie, which is a type of bird. IE in the middle of words has a long E sound, like in pierce. C says S because of the E. Niece, field, fiend. A fiend is a very evil person. Cashier, sh. Brief, which means something that takes very little time. Grief, this is going to have the sound of th. Thief, wield, and yield. So IE in the middle of a word is going to have a long E sound. Here are some more words. Shield, windshield, priest. This O is going to have the sound of priesthood. This O is going to schwa, which means a muffled short U sound. Frontier. Here we have a root word, achieve. Notice the CH says ch, and A at the beginning of words often schwas or takes a muffled sound. So here's our root, achieve. We can add suffixes to the end. Achievement, achieving. Notice that when you add a suffix that starts with a vowel, you drop the E. And achievable. While this by itself is the word able, as a suffix, it's pronounced more like able. So we have achievable, where once again the E got dropped because the suffix starts with an A. Here are some common exceptions where IE has a different sound. And this word is view with a long U sound. Here's the word friend, which has the short E sound. This is sieve with a short I sound. A sieve is something that has holes to sift. For example, if you want to remove rocks from sand. And here we have the word diet with a long I and a short E sound. For the most part, English does not use I at the end of words. In general, words ending in I will be foreign words or shortened words. A few words ending in I will have a long I sound, such as rabbi, alumni, and alkali. Notice the schwad sound again. But for the most part, words ending in I will have a long E sound, like bikini, khaki. This is a silent H. Khaki is a light yellowish brown fabric. Yeti, safari, note the muffled schwa sound again, and confetti. Several of the words ending in I in English are imported words from other languages where the I has the long E sound, like broccoli. Note that this O takes a muffled schwa sound or even disappears entirely. Kiwi with a long E. Chili, this H will be silent. Spaghetti and macaroni, this A you will notice schwas, so instead of macaroni, it's more like macaroni with a long O sound. Taxi and deli are two words that end in I that are actually shortened versions of other words. Taxi is short for taxi cab, and deli is short for delicatessen. There are also a few prefixes ending in the letter I. For example, mini and maxi both use a long E sound. These two prefixes can be pronounced with either a long E sound or a long I sound. So you could say this as anti or anti, semi or semi. We're going to learn about when I has the long E sound. When I is used before another vowel, it usually has the long E sound. Before we get to that, we need to review a few things from Level 7, Lesson 2. If you have IE together in the middle of a word, it usually has a long E sound, like in field. C followed by the E is going to have its soft sound of S. So peace, this TH will have the sound of th. Thief, grief, tear, view, yield, and diesel. When you have IE at the end of a word, if it's a short word, it will have the long I sound, like in pie and pies, lie and lies, die and dies. If it's at the end of a longer word, try the long E sound. O in this word will have the sound. So we have cookie and cookies. OA says O. Goalie and goalies. If you have a root word that ends in a Y, when you add a suffix that starts with another vowel, the Y will change to an I. So here we have the root word cry. So when we add the suffix ES, the Y changes to an I. This I and this I will keep the same long I sound that the root had. So we have cry, cries, and cried. Deny, denies, and denied. Try, tries, and tried. Now let's get to our new material. Here we have the root words. Here we're adding the suffix ear and the suffix eist. Here's our root funny. Y at the end of a longer word usually has a long E sound. When we want to say that something is more funny than something else, we say it's funnier, and the Y changes to an I, but it keeps the long E sound that it had in the root. So we have funny, funnier, funniest. This EA is going to use its most common sound of E, and the S will have the Z sound. Easy, easier, easiest. In this lesson, all of the underlined vowels will have their long sound. If you want to understand why that is, watch the videos in my syllable division boot camps. So here we have crazy, crazier, craziest. All three of these words had Y at the end having the long E sound, which it kept when we added the suffix. Here we have a short word ending in Y, which means we try the long I sound first, cry. So this root ends in a long I sound. So when we add the suffix ER, this I will keep the long I sound that the Y had. So we had cry and crier. Here are some more suffixes where I takes on a long E sound. We have eum. This C will have its soft sound of S because of the I. Calcium. All of these vowels are underlined and will have their long sound. Medium, premium, and stadium. Here is the suffix eus. OU usually has the sound ow, but when it's in a suffix, it takes on more of a short U sound. So this whole suffix is eus. So here we have curious, furious, serious, and obvious. IA at the end of a word usually has the sound of ia, but in a few words sounds more like ya, like in ammonia. In these three words, it has the clear ia sound, anemia, insomnia. Insomnia is when you have trouble sleeping. Mania. When you have IA in the middle of a word, it can have the long I sound rather than the short I, like in liable. While this word by itself is able, when it's used as a suffix, the A schwas, or takes on a muffled sound that sounds more like a short U or a short I. So we don't say liable, we say liable, viable. Here are more words where the I has a clear long I sound. Bias, trial, liar, vile, dial. This G will have the soft sound of J because of the I, and the suffix ANT usually schwas, and instead of having a clear ant sound, sounds more like int or unt. Giant, diary. The Y at the end has the long E sound. Here are more suffixes where you have I in front of another O. But these suffixes all have the schwa sound. What that means is that rather than having an IO or EO sound here or an EA sound here, it sounds more like ul. The TI and the CI in these suffixes sound like sh. You could see my video about Latin suffixes for more information about that. So this suffix is shun. So here we have nation, potion, faction, and fraction. This suffix is shul, partial, martial, remember AR says R, and spatial. This suffix is also shul, special, crucial, glacial. Here's the suffix eel. It's not a clear EL song, but eel, because AL as a suffix by itself takes on the muffled schwa sound of ul. So here we have trivial, medial, and serial. Here we have the root word deny, where the word ends in a Y, but it has a clear, long I sound. So when we add the suffix AL to the end, the Y changes to an I, and this I will keep the long I sound that the root had. So deny, denial. However, it's much more common for this suffix to be used after a word where the Y has a long E sound, like in colony. In this case, the I will keep the sound that the root had, which is a long E. So we have colony, colonial, family, familial. In other words, most of the time the suffix IAL sounds like eel, but it could sound like isle with a clear long I sound if the root ended in a long I sound. Here are some words ending in ION. In these two words, you have a clear I sound, lion and axion. The I sound in both of these words was a clear long I, but the O schwad and sounded more like a short U, lion, axion. When you have a word ending in L-I-O-N, so not the word lion, but these are the last 4 letters, or ending in N-I-O-N, it sounds more like yun, like an onion, union, minion, million, billion, and trillion. Notice that in these words, there's no clear sound from the I. Instead, the N or the L in front of it changes the I to sound more like a Y. Although most of the time IE in the middle of a word has the long E sound, there are some words where it splits into 2 vowel sounds. In these 2 words, the I takes on a clear long E sound, alien and Soviet. In these 2 words, the I keeps a long I sound, diet and client. Here are some words with IA in the middle rather than at the end, where the I has a clear long E sound. Piano, alias, avian, avian means bird, zodiac, AR says R, cardiac, ANT at the end of a longer word, usually schwas and sounds more like unt or int, deviant, radiant, ovarian, mediate, valiant, and variant. Here are some words with an IO and the I has a clear long E sound. Trio, AU says ah, audio, curio, folio, patio, polio, radio, OI says oi, opioid, and studio. Notice that most of the time when you see I and O together, it's at the end of the word. Let's review the suffixes where I usually has a clear long E sound. Ear, east, eum, eus, eel, eo, and ea. In all of these, the I and the O schwa. Shun, shun, shull, and shull. If you see an I and an E together in the middle of a word, try the long E sound first, like in field. If that doesn't give you a word you recognize, then try splitting it and giving the I the long I sound, like in diet. But most of the time in the middle of a word, it will have the long E. If you see an I and an A together in the middle of a word, not at the end in a suffix, but in the middle, try the long I sound first, like in the word bias. If you don't recognize the word, then change the long I to a long E, like in zodiac. We're going to learn about the 3 ways the sound sh is spelled in Latin suffixes. The most common one is shun, spelled T-I-O-N. You can see my video about Latin suffixes for more information about these. The T and the I together in all 3 of these suffixes say sh, and the O and the A schwa, which means they take the muffled sound of a short U. So this is shun, like an option, action, mention, OR says or, and portion. So this is our suffix shun. This one is shull. Again, the T and the I together say sh, and the A schwas, and has the short U sound. Initial, AR says R, partial. Altogether, this says shus. The T and the I say sh, and while OU usually says ow, in a suffix, it takes on the muffled schwa sound of So altogether, this suffix is shus. AU says ah, so we have cautious, contentious, contentious. There are some other ways to spell the sound of sh in a suffix. C and I can be used to spell it, like in the suffix shull. In the rest of this lesson, any underlined vowel has its long sound. To understand why, you can watch the videos in my syllable division boot camps. So this suffix is shull. So this word will be official, beneficial, crucial with a long U, social with a long O. This suffix has 2 different pronunciations. The most common one is shun with a sh sound. In these 4 words, we have the letter S before the suffix shun. These S's will go silent. So this word is not going to be miss-shun. It's mission, where this S goes completely silent. So here we have expression, obsession, passion, and pension. The other pronunciation of this suffix, which is much less common, is jeune. How do you know when to use this pronunciation? If your root word ends in the sound of D or Z, in other words, if the root ends in D or z, regardless of the spelling. It doesn't matter if the z is from the letter S or a Z, and it doesn't matter if there's a silent E, then you will use the pronunciation jeune. So here we have division because the root is divide. Here we have fusion because the root is fuse and ends in a z sound. Here we have the word evasion where the root is evade. If you can't remember this rule, that's okay, because most of the time you're going to use the shun sound and not the jeune sound. The rest of this lesson is optional. Here are some more Latin suffixes where the sound of sh is spelled with a CI or a TI. This one is shun, like in musician, where the S has the Z sound, or politician. This one is also shun. AR says R, so here we have Martian, somebody from the planet Mars. This one is shieri with a long A. ER says so we have tertiary. This one is shent, like in patient. This one is also shieri with a long A, judiciary. Let's learn about the differences between IR and IRR and OR and ORR in English words. If you have IR plus a consonant, then the sound is like in fur, sir, bird, firm, girl, the name Kirk, SH says sh, shirt, Q and U together say quirk. But if you have IRR, then the I will have a long E sound most of the time, like in mirror. Notice that this OR schwas, and rather than having a clear OR sound, sounds more like Irritate, irrigate, here's the suffix ible, irresistible. This does not apply if you have a verb that ends in IR, such as stir, and you have to double the R before adding a suffix that starts with a vowel. So this is still stirring, and this is stirred because they came from the root stir. This also does not apply in the word squirrel. When you have a word with OR plus a consonant after it, it says or, unless there's a W in front. So we have for, the car company Ford, cord, fork, port, horn, pork, born. If you have WOR, it sounds like were, like work, worm. TH in this word says worth, and word. ORR can have 3 different sounds. Most of the common words with ORR will have as their root one of the words on this page. So if you can learn these ones, you'll be able to figure out most of the rest of them. In these words, ORR sounds more like R with a broad A sound. Y at the end of a longer word usually has a long E sound. So we have sorry. In all 3 of these words, OW will have the long O sound. Borrow, this has a long O. Tomorrow, sorrow. In all of these words, ORR has a long O sound. Horrid, horror. Note again that the OR takes on a muffled sound. Here's the suffix ible again, horrible. Torrent, correlate, corridor. In the words in this column, the O schwas and sounds more like a short U, like in correct, correction. Note the suffix shun here, corrupt, and corrode. If you found this video useful, please do me a favor and share it with others on X, Facebook, or WhatsApp.